Yes, people, what's good and welcome to Tankscape. Now, guys, I've got Darren with me, and Darren and I go way, way back, and he's been in the reefing hobby for how long now, bro? How long you been in this game?
A long time, too
Yeah.
long,
Too long, too long.
25, 30 years, somewhere like that,
Yeah,
dwelling around.
30 years. Bloody
Mm,
hell, boy.
old
Right.
man.
So, what topic we have today? So, topic today is we're talking about starting a reef tank. Now, my experience when I started the reef tank, I had so many like different ways to do it. I've heard like you can have dry rock, you can have live rock, you can just put some bacteria in there. And you know, a joke about starting when I first started my tank, they gave me something to start ponds for koi to actually put like the bacteria into my tank, and I found that that's probably the wrong thing to use. So your experience, you've been in this game long, yeah? How do I start a tank? How should like beginners start a tank?
Well, they would have been, what was it, the Bacto balls? Was it
Yeah, the back
Bacto
door balls,
balls?
bro.
Yeah, like a jellified kind of cylindrical
Yeah, it was,
ball that's
and it's supposed to melt after a couple of weeks. You,
melts.
you, you know
Yeah,
how long it took me to cycle my first tank?
too long probably.
3 months.
Yeah, it's a long time. Well, technically not, depending on, like, again, how you went about it, how you approached it.
Oh, yeah. I was reading, and it said that I should have done. What I should have done is what I was reading about. Yeah, they said put the live rock in the dry rock in there. So I got rock. I broke it up, made my own little aquascape and everything else.
Mhm.
I put it in there, and I done the backdoor balls,
Yep,
and then I was phantom feeding.
yep.
So I was doing a bit of flake in there. So people ask me like, "What the hell? What are you feeding?" I said, "I'm trying to build bacteria." So after the second month, nothing was happening. Like it was just staying there. I didn't have any. It was just a nitrite, nitrite, nitrite. And then someone said to me, "Try Dr. Tim's." So I put the bottle of Dr. Tim's in there, and I put like half a bottle of ammonia in there, bro.
Good
Like
product.
half a bottle of ammonia in there. The
Uh,
house stank.
Again, depending on obviously the volume of water that you had,
It was 90 liters, man.
it's one of those. It just depends on obviously, like you say at the time, very naive, very new to the hobby. So
Yeah,
you were, numbers in a sense wasn't probably your primary concept at the time, but you learn, you make mistakes. That's reefing,
I know. Yeah, Sam was not impressed. But after that, when I started speaking to you, you started to put me on game. You started to say to me, right, this is what you have to do. I think you said to me, switch your skimmer on, and hopefully all that crap will be pulled out. And like within a day, when I opened the cup, because it's a little Fluval skimmer, the original one, that just stank of ammonia. And when I checked, I think it was 2 days later, had nitrate in there, and there was a lot of nitrate. It was just like everything. And then tank started settling. Then
Yeah,
you tested my water. And then I think I got my first clownfish from you as well. No,
probably.
yeah,
Yeah, more than likely, I think at the time, to be fair. But then, like you say, depending on how much of that product Dr. Tim's you put in at the time, obviously it goes to show it did work because the
mm,
nitrification did come through and eventually you did get levels of NO3 available. So
yeah, for 3 weeks,
it
after
may have
three
been
months.
overdosed initially, but you got there in the long run.
Oh, man.
As long as, like you say, there was no livestock in there, so there wasn't really a primary threat towards anything from a fish's perspective, anyway.
Yeah,
To be
yeah,
honest with you, because again, you were cycling, so it's just the way it is sometimes. But to be fair, there was no harm caused because obviously it worked.
yeah. Dr. Tibbs is a good product, man. So I started the dry rock. Took me 3 months. Yeah, my mistakes and that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So for people starting, yeah, in your opinion, like, what have you seen the most success with? Dry rock, live rock, marine cultured rock, or marine live rock, whatever they call it now.
I think again, depending on the time. I mean, when I first started reef keeping, we're going back to very, very basics. I mean, there was a lot of unknown
Mm,
in regards to longevity, how to even keep something alive for more than, say, a month, for instance. I know it
yeah.
sounds a bit harsh, but that was the reality then.
Didn't they have like didn't they big up things like when you have a coral skeleton there, like people used to use that as like
Yeah,
ornaments and
so what
stuff.
you'll find is a lot of retailers at the time, obviously, they would import dead skeletons, sort of maybe Porcellopora, Stylophora, some of the organ pipe corals. There was a few others as well. And again, you would literally just use them as part of your ornamental look.
Mm,
And then you'd buy like a separate product, and maybe once a week, 2 weeks, you take that coral skeleton out, and you'd bleach it in an aquarium bleach.
really?
Technically, yeah. So it's not bleach as in home domestic bleach, but it was a kind of sterile bleach that you'd use to whiten the coral back up again, because obviously under the back then was sort of T8 tubes,
Yeah.
as far back as even T12s as well, but with small reflectors on, the corals would green up. So within 3 weeks, you'd have an aquarium that again looked nice, but what you'll find is your aquascape, i.e., the dead coral skeletons,
Mm.
would be all green and brown and covered in algae.
Ah,
and part of your substrate too. So that was a practice that was done. But again, it was more around the sort of under gravel filter kind of concept with maybe some power heads on the uptakes, and you normally kind of go through the different coarse media within your substrate.
Mm.
So you start with quite thick at the bottom, and then sort of mid coarse, and then fine coarse on the top. That was to aid in filtration to some degree.
Yeah.
But again, there wasn't really any sort of methods. It was kind of just water change and monitor everything with a sort of I can't even think of the word what they're called now.
Hydrometer kind of thing.
Hydrometry. That's the word I was looking for. It's that long ago since I used
So
one.
basic as hell, innit?
That's it. Very,
Basic,
very
man.
basic fundamentals. Like I say, there are a few books around, but obviously the internet wasn't really about then. I mean, we're talking probably not as prime, not as well. It was, but it wasn't so significant. To be
Yeah,
fair,
yeah.
it was still very basic. Kind of dial-up internet would take half an hour to get on.
Let me get me started with dial up.
Yeah, we're going back to those days when things first sort of come around. But again, it wasn't so much literature, and again, nobody was really pushing too much on the forefront because everything was written in books most
Mm.
of the time, obviously. But then as soon as the age of the internet became the thing, everything just became worldly available so quick, so fast on the palm of
Yeah.
your hand, basically. So yeah,
So,
but back then it was very
yeah.
different.
So the skills, all right. So yeah. So it was really basic from back then. I don't want to imagine what the power heads look like. So all that technology we have now, I mean, everything's on Bluetooth or a wireless platform or
Yeah.
internet platform. So you can literally look at your phone and control your tank or know what's going on, have some idea what the trends are on your tank. So from your experience from then, yeah, bro, till now, I personally prefer a dry rock setup
Mhm.
because I think dry rock it allows you to have more control as to what goes in your tank to some degree. I mean, when you start adding corals and like hermit crabs, things can creep in or slip in, but I think you have a more controlled way of starting a tank. With live rock, I think, and I want your opinion on this, yeah. With live rock, I think you have a better start, but less control as to what comes into your tank.
Um, I kind of get the angle that you're coming at because there was a period of time where the fear of God was put into most reefers in regards to the potential what would come in on
Bobbit
your live
worms. Yeah.
rock. Again, this is just natural. It's what naturally predates in the ocean, and it's a concept that if you're willing to commit to keeping a reef tank, you've got to basically sacrifice that. It's something that is part of the hobby if you think about it, because what you're asking to do is you're taking technically a
Yeah.
section of the ocean and you're asking yourself to then take it home and put it in a glass box and then maintain it to the best you possibly can.
But even that gives you headache though with the things you put in there. So what if you got a
Find it the
adaptation?
fascination and trying to understand what the whole biodiversity is all about. See, again, me going back to briefly what you touched on earlier was, would I choose synthetic rock? Would I choose live rock? Or would I choose this sort of maricultured rock
Mm.
that we're seeing more now? 100% live rock,
Yeah.
because of the way that the system literally is biologically mature, the fact that the level of fauna that's available from that rock, it's the levels of strains of bacteria that come with that rock. Um, it just literally almost enables you to be more successful in the earlier stages, I feel, because you've got the fauna there that will get you through that first sort of maturation phase.
Yeah.
Whereas the inert rock, for
Yeah.
instance,
But hold up, yeah.
struggles.
All right then. So look at this, yeah. So how about all the products you have
Yep,
to put in the tank when you have the like dry rock, the nut rock? Because when when we first set up this system here, it
yep,
was on is it eco friendly rock with tropical marine
yeah, yeah.
or tropical marine center?
TFT, yep.
Was that cell rock with the shapes and that, yeah? And then I didn't have to do anything in there. We just put live sand. We added the corals and the fish, and it was good to go. I lost nothing. Didn't see any fish.
Mm,
When I changed the aquascape over, it was the same scenario where there was something in there. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with you here because there's some bacteria in there to help it along.
mm.
But I feel with the products that we have now, like things like is it Fritz that has that bacteria you can put in there. There's ATM Colony.
There is.
There's you can even buy bacteria now in certain bottles you can actually put in there
Mm.
to help the cycle go on quicker and add fish and this and that. So do you
But
think
is it natural?
it's a bacteria, so it has to be
To
natural,
a
doesn't it?
degree, they are, because obviously it's cultured bacteria that were probably pulled from another industry, to be fair, and
Mm,
obviously then utilised along that concept and then brought into the aquatic trade. What you'll find in the aquatic trade generally is
mm.
a lot of products are coming from other areas. And what they tend to do is they tend to harness that once they've sort of had that light bulb moment to say, whoa, hang on a minute, we could use this in the aquatic trade
Mm,
because it has benefits of such and such and such and such. So
yeah.
yes, it works, but there's not that natural biological process where everything is working in combination with each other
Mhm.
in order to make it a successful reef aquarium.
So you think it's more about having a natural biome or
Oh,
creation
yeah, balance
rather
within the
than
system.
controlling what's going on in the system?
Absolutely, because again, you could almost say that's a sort of synthetic way of trying to mature a system. Okay, in the long run, you'll get there because you'll have longevity and time that will allow the levels of bacterias, levels of, let's say, dinos, for instance, because they are there, they're present,
Yeah,
but they're just
definitely,
suppressed because
definitely.
obviously other things are more primary. So you've then got things like, zooxanthellae, obviously within the coral tissue, and then you have other factors where you've got creatures that I say work in the background that are constantly there working on your benefit
Yeah.
rather than theirs to make sure that your aquarium's successful, because most of the time people in this hobby fail very quickly because you'll often see this, they can't get through the stage, what we call the ugly
Ugly
stage, the
stage. Yeah,
maturation
yeah.
phase, that first sort of 3 to 4 months where you could go through levels of diatoms, you could go through dinoflagellates, you could have cyano,
Oh God, yeah,
all sorts of it, because
yeah.
obviously there's no nutrient balance yet, there's no sufficient nitrification occurring yet, there's no denitrification occurring yet. So this is what I say when I say obviously pick the live rock, because that is the kind of levels of bacteria that you're naturally bringing in,
Mhm.
that is being harvested from the ocean, that you're bringing to your part of the ocean, in its sense, to your home.
Yeah.
So
So, so,
I
you,
get it.
so in your opinion, you think live rock's the way to go? Like,
100%, yeah. I've tried them all. I've tried everything, and what I've found is with the completely sort of sterile inert rocks with these lovely sort of scapes, these lovely overhangs, arches, and
yeah, respect the scape,
ceramic based concepts.
respect the scape. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
well, it is what it is. I'm going to say it how I see it.
yeah.
I'm not a lover to a degree because, again, it is sort of ceramic based. It's
Mm.
sort of sintered glass. It is what it is. So for me, that's why a lot of people struggle again with the sort of hair algae issue, the GHA, and obviously then they go through these horrible phases where it takes the system so much longer to get that maturation and the balance working in harmony with each other, that I feel that if people did use live rock more, and again, I know there's that kind of sort of green friendly kind of concept now where obviously they don't want to be ripping rock from the ocean, but you've got to remember the rock is already been detached technically from the reefs. These are taken from rubble areas.
Yeah.
They're not
But
ripped completely
but
off a reef.
is it that company in America that's taking rock, man-made rock, and they put it in the ocean?
This is it.
But the thing is, yeah, with that, yeah, I think it's a positive thing, but that turns into ocean live rock after a while anyway, because all the critters and everything else come on there.
Absolutely.
However, what I found with, when you buy ceramic, like when you have a ceramic arch, like what I got there's certain
Yeah,
things it leaches out.
it does.
I let my rock sit in RDI water, that rock, that aquascape there for about, I would say 4 days. And I was just changing RDI water over and over, just whatever's in there was on the surface to come out.
Yeah.
But I got sold this rock on the premise that, well, with the man-made rock, there's more surface area for bacteria, but surface is a surface and bacterial populated, even though it's from the ocean or it's man-made. What's your thoughts on that, bro?
Get just clever marketing.
You think
Believe me,
so?
yeah, this
Yeah.
hobby's full of clever marketing. The way they word things, again, they're literally there to sort of throw it in your face to try and, you know,
Mm?
mislead you to an extent in what the product actually does. It's one of those issues where it's like a juicens concept. Does it do exactly what it says on the tin, kind of thing?
Taste sweet, taste like
It's got to be exactly that in this hobby because we soon see through it
yeah,
as reefers, as hobbyists. We
yeah,
soon see through it, and again,
yes.
we then sort of get misled into it, and then all of a sudden we have this light bulb moment and go, hang on a minute, come on.
That's exactly what I'm going
I'm
through at
not
the
playing
moment,
this
bro.
game anymore
That's
because
exactly.
very quickly you can get caught up in all of this. And I've often found that there's certain products that work and there's certain products that don't work, but
Mm.
have great PR behind it, great marketing behind it. Even some of the studies they do pre-release is great evidence behind it, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody.
And that's another thing I'll to say, like, excuse me, the more I do this hobby, yeah, the less equipment and the less BS I take on board because I'll see a product, everyone's raving about it like this and that. You should try this when you're starting off your tank. Try this. I'm thinking, just stick to the basics. Just stick to the basics. Get the rock in there. It could be dry rock, it could be live rock. Do what you have to do. Be patient. And that part, I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people I've spoken to, where that nutrient imbalance side of it, and they just want to dose more bacteria, or they want to dose this product. Or I was guilty of it. What's it called? Reflux for hair algae.
Yeah, yeah,
So I was guilty of that. Like, I remember when I first started this up, I had hair algae, just dose reflux in there. And first thing you said to me, get something to predate on the hair algae. So
yeah.
I got a Tomini tang, I got snails, I got hermit crabs. I think in the space of like 3 weeks, gone. So it's just, I think for a lot of people when you're starting up in this hobby, is listen to people that have been through it. I take a look at people's tanks as well, my G.
So again, the product fluconazole, which is generally used for sort of thrush
Yeah.
in sort of women and men, to be fair,
Yeah.
that was the product. Again, it's a very stereotypical type concept, like I just said to you earlier on. A product from a completely different aspect of pharmaceutical medicine
Let's try it in a
that's
tank.
now
Yeah.
brought into the aquatic trade to control hair algae.
Mm.
Because obviously there must be similar characters in order for the product to work. Again, that's used with men and women, and as well as aquatic green hair algae. So,
Yeah.
again, straight away, there's a relationship. Somebody's gone, oh, light bulb moment. We can use that product. Let's package it. Let's box it. Let's ship it. Let's
Mm.
get it out there. People will use it,
Yeah.
and it does. So, a lot of that is done, and you'll see it more when you go to trade shows and you're in the trade a little bit more. You tend to see how sort of the products are brought to manufacture, or how they're brought to market as well, to be in a sense, in the great sort of marketing teams and people that are around the hobby that have been doing it for a very, very long time. Um, but like I said earlier, it doesn't take long for you to suddenly realize, and like you just sort of picked up on as well, that
Yeah.
you soon get the sort of sensation of, do I really need to do this anymore?
Every day I look at the tank, I take something off. I don't need this. I don't need that.
Yeah,
Start dosing this.
because the fundamentals are alkalinity, calcium, magnesium,
Yeah. Trace elements. If you want to go into that.
potassium, and iodine,
Yeah.
manganese, kind of primary for me generally.
Yeah, but that's for the more advanced kind of refund. Now we talk about like the
Mate,
starting off.
but starting off, yeah, generally, but even that's the fundamentals. Because you think even if you're just doing basic water changes, that they're kind of your sort of foundation primary elements that are within your salt mix. So
Yeah.
if you're looking to be, like I say, very active reefer in that respect, then that's all you're really looking for, to sort of harmonize your system and
Yeah.
balance it, so you achieve the stability.
Yeah. So you know what, like when I first cycled, when I finally cycled the first aquarium, like I done a 10%, 20% water change for the
Mm.
system. So like a good old chunk. And someone recommended to do that to add fresh stuff into there. But someone said to me I should not be doing water changes. What I should be doing is actually adding fish and then, just monitoring it that way. So what did you do? Like what's your recommendations, bro? Because so many people say do different things, but I think most of them probably are right.
Yeah, they are right. I mean, don't get me wrong. Um, for some people, the concept of water change works because it's part of their maintenance structure. It's
Mm.
how they've evolved their aquarium. Other people will say, no, don't do that because they've evolved their aquarium in another way, in another method. So there's an approach that you can have in a multitude of ways, but it may not necessarily work for you like it would for somebody else.
And that's my ethos,
So
taking
again,
advice.
that could come down to certain practices that you do, how
Hmm.
many fish you have, how heavy you feed, how well your import-export concept is, um, and just your general alert and awareness of how your aquarium is functioning on
Yeah.
a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. So again, the approach is what works for you and how you put that into practice
Into your system.
week after week, month after month.
Yeah.
So again, I've tried a lot of them over the years, and again, I'll touch on it like we said earlier on. The natural way I find is the easier way. So, like you said earlier on, if there was something that you had an issue with, get something that naturally predates it.
Mm.
If there's something that you want to control with nutrient, find something naturally that will absorb it. So, again, if there's a pest element, find something that hunts for it. So it's kind of looking at all the natural ways that you can kind of run your reef aquarium before you approach the chemical approach in regards to buying a product and it says it does this, this, and this,
Yeah.
and then you attack the system with it without really knowing the detrimental effects that are occurring. So Going back to it, I would probably do it that way
Yeah.
all the time.
But I think that's a very important thing for people to understand when they're starting up a system. How you set up
Hmm.
your way of thinking of looking at the system is so important because it will determine how you move forward with your system. So if you start your system and you're impatient when it comes to stages, like the ugly stage, um, for cyano, for example, to ease off on the sandbed, when you see things pop up in your system that you aren't ready for, or you're doing something that's incorrect and causing that, the impatience really gets to you. I
Mm.
found, especially when you're starting up,
Yeah.
especially when adding fish. I remember I remember
Yeah.
speaking to what was it? What? Oh, someone on Instagram messaged me. They literally set up the tank was a beautiful tank. Aquascape was, but something like 10 days after starting up, he added like I think it was a harem of clownfish. Don't get me wrong, clownfish are very robust fish,
Mm.
but I think for all that the cycling process with no added bacteria in there, the ammonia spike and the nitrate spike, sorry, nitrite and all that is not healthy for the fish. So I just said to him, like, maybe you should just wait a little bit and just test it till your nitrate was up there and your system could
Mm.
process waste. Then add your fish in stages rather than adding a whole, like, 12 fish in there.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, man? Because, come on, it must affect the fish in some way.
It does definitely. Because I mean, in the early days of reef keeping, it was something like a piece of table shrimp or something like that that was left to decompose in your aquarium to just to produce the ammonia.
So straight from the stir fry, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. It
Straight
could
from
be
the stir
anything.
fry
Yeah,
into it.
it's even straight out of the sea into your aquarium. I mean, even down to the point where we used to use mollies from the freshwater side of
They
things.
can be converted to salt, innit?
Yeah, we used to use mollies to mature the system. So again, it was a cheaper alternative to marine fish then. It
Mm,
may not have been an ethical way of doing it, but the practice was there and it happens. So yeah, we used mollies because then they sort of semi-brackish, so you could convert them over. We used them to, like you say, mature the tank during its nitrification stage. Um, so again, it's kind of like, but there is a balance to doing that. Because unless you've got an ammonia source,
yeah.
you cannot produce the nitrogen cycle.
And that's the pee and poo from the fish, right?
Basically, yeah. So there is a limitation. So for some people, I would sort of say steer away from it and use some of the products that you can buy off the shelf nowadays. But maybe to the trained aquarist who has a full understanding of what is going to occur
Yeah.
within that first 3 to 6 weeks, for instance, then you could try it. But again, people used to use more what we call the hardier species of fish, like clowns, for instance,
Chromies as
some
well.
of the damsel species
Mm.
as well. So again, it's what you find within the practice that tends to work for you.
And what you want to build as well is so important.
Yeah.
Going back to what we spoke about, the types of rock, yeah,
Mhm,
something just came to my mind, bro. If you put dry rock in a system
mhm,
and you put live sand in there,
mhm.
technically you stand a better chance of cycling quicker. No?
Yes, there is, but again, these are forms of bacteria that are in suspension. They've been manufactured to be kept in a certain environment for a period of time before they lose their. I'm trying to think again because I'm no lab grade specialist or no lab
Yeah,
technician by any means,
yeah.
but they kind of lose their purity in
Mm.
regards to the way that obviously you can then colonize them and multiply them.
So it'll probably take longer to do what they have
It
to
would
do,
be.
innit?
So realistically, if you bought a 25 kilo or say, oh, no, sorry, 20-pound bag of live sand, for instance, that's been kept in this particular solution in order for it to, when it hits salt water at a certain temperature under a certain salinity, will trigger it into hatching and then multiplying within the system. So how do you know the success rate of that?
Mm. Unless you send like an ICP from Oceamo for
Yeah,
them to
but
check on your
again,
bacteria.
but the ICP won't test for that. You'd have to look for a micro, is it micro home or microbiome or something?
What?
Again, that's
Yeah.
that's nearly several £100s for a test for that.
Doesn't Oceamo do like a test
They
that you?
do, but that's very expensive.
Is it?
Well, they technically don't. They kind of subcontract that out to another company that will do that test for you. But it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Very, very
I think that's
expensive.
something we need to touch on. But
Yeah.
you mentioned temperature, bro, because right when I started up, yeah, I tend to run well, I always tend to run my system between 25 and 26. 26.2-ish,
Mm.
the highest. You said to me the other day you're on 24.3 or something like
Mm.
that. Why so low?
Because you'll find that's the general sort of temperature that most corals and fish are kept in, to be honest with you.
So my stuff's too high then.
Generally, yeah. See, the thing is, again, it's another sort of issue I'm talking about earlier on when I say what works for you. So technically, what we do here in the UK is because we have a multiple seasons within our year, for instance,
Mhm.
during our sort of spring and summer months, obviously our temperature increases within our homes. We don't have air conditioning in every single home in the UK because we don't need it. They can be cold
Well,
abroad.
if you have a reef tank, maybe might be an excuse to buy
I mean,
an
almost
AC.
built within the bricks and the
Oh no,
blocks
oh
to
no,
run. We
no,
don't
no,
we
no,
don't install it as part of the sort
no.
of general build.
You
So we
should
don't
though.
have that. It's an option that we add to our homes, or we have a mobile unit that
Mm,
does it during the summer months. But what happens is obviously there's a temperature fluctuation that occurs.
mm,
So instead of allowing that temperature to fluctuation to occur during the summer, what some people tend to do is already run it at the slightly higher end. So you don't have that change between 24 to say 28,
right.
because that's quite a significant increase, almost 4-degree increase. So what we tend to do is say run it at 26. So then when the transition occurs from spring to summer, where the temperature starts rising indoors, the change differential is very short and very sort of sweet in a sense.
So
So
for
it's
the
only
tank
like
gonna
a
feel
two
it.
degree increase rather than a 4-degree increase. So we allow for that. So what I tend to do is because I live on the coast, very close to the sea, I my place doesn't really get too hot. It doesn't get like that. So if anything, I'd probably jump a degree,
Yeah.
if that.
Bro, there was once this flat was so hot. I saw Satan walk out and saying, F this. That's how
Yeah.
hot it was one summer. We had to get an AC unit. Well, I had to get an AC unit for my family, no, the tank, to keep things cool. And then I go into the fans. But putting all that aside, yeah, what I'm trying to work through is would I see more success if, or would people see more success, you think, if they run it low with somewhere to cool it down during the summer months? So run that 24.5 and then put a fan on there and then trying to keep it that way. Or keep it on 25 to 26 and then deal with the increase during the summer months.
Maybe not so much. I mean, I don't know the science behind how temperature would.
Isn't that the pace of things, though, isn't it? The
It
hotter
could
it
do,
is,
yeah, in
it's
regards to the
metabolism.
way, obviously, the sort of biological processes that are occurring in the background within the coral tissue, within the zooxanthellae, within everything. Obviously, a temperature is everything in many walks of
Mhm.
life. So it can have an effect. Obviously, the warmer it gets, the likelier the living organisms are going to bail out,
Yeah.
basically. The cooler, I think there's more tolerance, to be fair, if it's cooler. Again, there is a point at which it's too cool, but what you'll find is naturally, again, in most places, majority of corals do live quite deep. Don't get me wrong, there are areas of shallowness, and,
Yeah.
and these corals that live in the shallows, where it's tidal shallows, for instance, they've evolved and adapted to that environment. Same as everything else. But majority of corals that live on reefs, they're generally pretty deep, and the
Yeah.
water is cooler.
Like the SPS and that. Like if you get on an Aussie, I haven't been, but what I've seen the bombies in Australia, they're quite about a couple of meters deep.
You're
But
talking, let's be honest, on average, I would say, I mean, again, I'm no diving expert, but I've done a bit of diving in my time.
mm,
I mean, the first sort of reef crest part, sort of the surface of a reef, I'd say on average is between sort of 3 to 4 meters deep.
you know.
And
So
then after that, you're going down on average, you're going sort of 14 15 meters deep.
so in our aquarium, so would you all right, let's go back to temperature, yeah, before we go into corals. I think that'll be good for another episode. Because I know that's your stick man, aren't you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
like my
yeah.
sticks.
Yeah, so temperature wise, what would you say people should do? Because I think people starting in the hobby should aim for around 25 degrees, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anywhere between 26 and 24. I mean, that's the area generally that you can keep really successful aquariums in, to be honest with you. I tend to stay more on the cooler side because it's just what I prefer. I tend to feel as if it is more biologically feasible for things to be more active in that kind of end of the temperature spectrum.
Mhm.
The warmer things are, it may speed it up a little bit, but may not necessarily work as efficiently. But again, that's just my perspective. I'm no scientist behind all this. It's just my own personal opinion on that. But I would kind of say, yeah, within that area, you'll do fine.
All right, next question, yeah. Two heaters or one heater, depending on your system. What would you recommend for people?
Again, it's preference. I mean, if you're one of these reefers that's scared of your own shadow, if we want to say it like that, some people would have a heater for a backup, um, in just in case the other one fails for some reason. Have I ever done it? No.
I've never done two heaters, bro.
Um,
I've had spare heaters in the back, but never a heater.
I know there's times when these things can occur when you're not here or you're away on holiday. Um, but again, most of the time, most reefers are really proactive on their systems and they notice these things.
See, keyword there, proactive. So when you're starting off, you have to be proactive to learn it, man.
100%. You've got to
You
be
have to be,
committed.
bro.
You've got to be committed. If you're not committed, don't even bother entering this game because it's like looking after another child. You have to commit on that level. If you don't, then you will fail.
Yeah.
100% you
Oh,
will.
headache to hell.
It does because it might start with a headache, but then it'll lead to a failure because again, it's time, money, and resources that you're putting into it, and whether it's your partner at the time that makes you realise that the fact that you're piling so much of your hard-earned money into your reef aquarium and it's not becoming successful.
Mm,
And sometimes your attitude, sometimes it's your approach, sometimes it's the lack of being proactive towards it,
yeah.
and really also learning to understand what it is you're actually keeping.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another important thing. So, temperature,
Yep.
decent heater for your temp to control your temperature.
Yeah.
Would you recommend a controller for your heater as well if you're starting off?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, controllers are good. Um,
What's that? Is it D? Is it DD or D and D?
it's D&D.
D and D. Oh, it said DD. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, it's D&D Aquarium Solutions. Again, they obviously do their own one. Originally, that was simply Aquaria that obviously manufactured that, and then you've got Inkbird as well, which are another company that do one. And then obviously, if you've got a monitoring control system, something like Apex, sort of
Would you recommend Apex for someone just
object.
starting off? I would say if someone's starting off and you can afford to get an Apex, it will let you know trends, especially it'll make things easier for you. Now, I'm talking about the Trident, you know.
No,
I'm talking about
the
controlling,
monitoring sort of
yeah,
thing.
controlling
Yeah.
your even your pH and your what you call it, is
From
it
starting off, see, for
Radox?
me, I would kind of say no because you know what it does? It makes you become lazy.
It
So
depends.
for me, you're not experiencing the full aspect of reefing and learning it from the ground up. Whereas if you're implementing all this equipment from the very beginning, which is great, like you said, if you can afford it and it's
Mm.
within your budget, fantastic. But you're losing the ground fundamentals of what it takes to be a reefer
All right, yeah, yeah. I see where you're coming from. Okay,
because all that testing concept teaches you a lot
yeah,
and
that's what I'm
logging
about to
it
say.
and then obviously using it as a point of reference to almost try and find an area where something occurred
Hmm.
and you don't understand why. But if you can look back at some of your records, maybe there's a starting point to understand why there's been a fluctuation of some sort within the last 3 months, for instance, 2 months, month,
Yeah.
for you to go down. So that teaches you a lot in regards to how to reef an aquarium. Whereas having a monitoring system is fantastic. Again, it will give you, redox, pH, salinity, as well as temperature. So that's good. But what you're finding is you become more lazy in that area when you have
When
your
you say
systems.
lazy and just complacent, because all right,
I think lazy
let
personally.
let me read. You're saying as it is.
Lazy.
Let me rephrase it.
Go on.
I agree with you that you have to kind of learn the fundamentals. 1000%. Learn how to test your alkalinity and know how your test kits work. Because sometimes I test for alkalinity, I'm like, why is it saying 15? Oh, I missed that step, or I didn't hold it for long enough. Especially like things like the titration and that.
Yeah.
You just yeah. So you need to learn them test kits properly and understand them and how to interpret them as well. I think from what you were saying there, which your point I agreed with, Apex and all the monitoring equipment you have, in extension, they're kind of like top of the range computerized test kits, especially the Trident,
Mm.
right? And that's for like when you're keeping corals to monitor your big three. But when starting off, things to control things like heaters, I think is important where you can have stability in your temperature, and that's something people can really sink their teeth into that stability thing.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with
100%.
with the heaters and that, and have a dependable heater as well. I always say to people like when they message me on Instagram or Facebook, research the heater that you want. Check on YouTube, check on people's channel, check on my channel. Yeah, yeah, just make sure HC Aquatics. Yeah, talk about heaters and see which ones you could lean on. You can get the submersible ones that's fully titanium, or you can get the ones that you can actually adjust. So just do some research, and that's so important. Okay, so you don't have fish in there. Do you think people should invest in a wave maker so that they have still have flow in the tank when they're starting off?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Why do you think that though?
Why?
Mm,
Um, you've got to have movement. Corals rely on movement. Fish to a degree rely on movement because 9 times out of 10 that movement of water brings food to them
yeah.
as well as
But
takes it away.
just say for example, you don't have fish, you don't have coral, you just have the box and you cycling. You
Yep.
still flowing there?
Yeah, well, yeah, generally I would because obviously, it's part of how things would naturally occur.
Mm,
Because you do have tidal movements, you do have volumes of water that change within reef structures constantly. Warm and cold streams of water coming in. Again, it's a life source, even for
yeah.
bacteria.
I was about to say that they need oxygen, don't
They
they?
do, and you're bringing that in with movement, obviously agitating the surface to allow for gas exchange as well during that process. So the last thing you want is a very stagnant aquarium with no surface agitation, because that's where a lot of gas exchange
Mm,
occurs along the surface. So yeah, set it up as if you were literally going to go all out. There's no point obviously adding things along the way if they're part of the initial foundations to run a successful reef
yeah.
aquarium.
I got a question for you. Yeah. When I first started, as soon as like I took what you say there to heart, and I did exactly that.
Mm.
I had a skimmer on, I had the wave maker on, everything, and even the lights. I kept the lights on, and I think if I were to start again, if I was to get an upgrade and have a bigger tank, I would probably like start from scratch, no
Yeah.
chlorine, nothing. I would leave my skimmer off. I'll say for the first month or two.
Yeah. Well,
Just
yeah.
leave it off, bro. You don't need it. You're not pulling out anything. And if there's any bacteria in there, and to be honest with bacteria, if you use your skim, you're not pulling anything out because they're on the rock surface, aren't they? They're not really floating in the water.
Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, some are obviously free swimming. Some obviously become more free swimming between night and day. Again, the whole concept of protein skimming is to remove organics,
Mm,
fatty acids, lipids, anything that can be removed via that method. Again, in the early stages, you're not going to have that available
no,
because you haven't become what we say active in regards to the point of origin, which is ammonia, which does the conversion, which then obviously produces your eventual organics on the back end of that process. So, and some people will even not even use
yeah, but you're
the
supposed to
protein skimmer
be up.
at all.
Yes, I've seen a couple of. I don't know about that,
Um,
bro. Would you rely on something like a refugium to do with
yeah,
nutrients or
because again, we never had the protein skimmers in and around the very sort of beginning of the reefing days. They didn't really exist.
just buckets in it?
It was just a case of sort of water changes. Again, the first ones were sort of air pump driven through a wooden air diffuser in a sort of in a plastic cylindrical, wow, sort of constructed skimmer, I suppose, with a little hang-on method, and you'd come along maybe every couple of days, and you'd go and wipe the collection cup for and put it back on, and a lot of the time you had a lot of sort of fine particular bubbles going around in the aquarium at the
Mm,
same time. So again, the early methods were very, very basic, and then obviously they became more advanced. But realistically, I suppose you could say if you've got a really successful macroalgae bed
you're
ball,
good to go.
again, it's going to be utilised. It's an organic
Yeah.
form. It can be utilised by whatever plant matter,
There's no
bacterial
no
levels.
skimmers in nature, is there?
There isn't, but you'll often sometimes see it if you're walking along a beach and it's been a huge big swirl out there or a huge big storm, and you often see that foam
Mm.
extraction on the edge of the beach there. And again, that is nine times either sort of what do we call it, sort of phytoplankton or levels of
Mm.
it can even be sewage nowadays, to be
Oh
fair.
God, yeah, around here.
Proteins that come from
Mm.
that and sort of say fatty acids and other bits and pieces. But you do often see it. But no, you're right. There is no protein skimmer in the ocean, so it is done very differently. But if you can use even mangroves, if you're using chaetomorph, if you're using forms of caulerpa, even if you're whatever form algae scrubber where you're just encouraging any form of algae to grow,
Take up those nutrients and
yeah,
organics.
it will absorb it the same as plants would on land. When you give it organic nutrients, it will absorb it, it
But
will utilize it.
you started doing a refugium now because from the time I've known you, I've never known you to run refugium. How's that working out for you?
Yeah, I've always, I mean, to be honest, I've used it on and off because, like I've said to you before, I used to be very nutrient deprived because I am more
The
coral.
knife's edge of it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
more coral enthusiast than I am fish, and fish used to annoy me sometimes, and eventually I never used to have enough fish. But over the years, I've sort of added more and more fish, and again, that process is now kind of balanced itself back out. But
Mm.
I mean, no, years ago, I used to use Chato, I used to tumble it, so I used to sort of, give my sump a section where I'd put a small power head along the very bottom, and I would literally tumble the Chato. So I was getting constant sort of photosynthesis over the whole surface area
Yeah.
consistently, and eventually it molds to the shape of that section where it's kept. So no, I've used it many a times before. Again, in the early days as well, we used to use a lot of sort of caulerpa species in the actual main aquarium to grow alongside the corals. But again, that became too robust and too rampant, and it used to sort
Yeah.
of smother certain corals, and eventually that sort of method got took away.
So, all right. Okay, cool. So we're talking about like I think we're going into more the when you have corals and that, but let's stay on when you first starting up. Is there any other bits of equipment you recommend to people that are just starting off? Like if someone walked into a shop or someone found you on your Facebook page,
Mm.
Coral Candy, make sure you guys check him out, guys. And they message you, what do I need to start a reef tank? I know we spoke about the heater, obviously
Patience.
patience, whatever. Yeah, patience is a big one.
I think
That's
just
an issue in
patience.
itself, bro.
Again, I think we touched on some of the bottled strains of bacteria that you can purchase nowadays, which again wasn't around in the earlier days. Patience is just such a massive key. If you're coming into this hobby as a complete newbie, with a general understanding of what it is that you're approaching, because you've had freshwater experience
Mm,
or you've had maybe cold water species and even ponds as well, all the concepts are very similar in the way that you maintain your systems as well as your ponds. But it is just patience because it's during that maturation period is where you tend to find most people would spend not more time researching what they're coming into or
mm,
what's going to happen in the coming weeks.
yeah,
So that's the key area where you sit down, you do your research, you look at the next phase, which will be introducing livestock. So we've gone through the initial setup phase. We've gone and got some or made your own RO water. You've added your salt into it. You've brought it up to temperature. Blah 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 blah. You've now got obviously an aquascape in there, whether it be live, mariculture we'll call it,
mm.
synthetic, and now everything's powered up. It's all running. You might want to put a couple of hours of light on that scape for
Yeah,
a few days of the week.
the lighting in that, man. Do you think we should put people should
I think so,
run?
yeah,
Yeah, I
because
think so
you
too, you know.
trigger in some of the again the other aspects of what grows within the reef aquarium. It's not just corals.
Mm,
You've got other aspects that are there to benefit the system. Even things some people love it, some people hate it, and some people thrive for it and just cannot produce it. It's like things like coralline algae.
yeah,
They want that sort of purpley look, that white, sterile, new kind of say, whoa, it's a bit in your face. It's a bit like, oh, I need a bit of maturation in this system. It needs to calm down a bit. So it helps in that respect. And again, even it's just a visual thing for you to feel
mm.
confident in things are moving forward because you want to have a quick look in the aquarium. Why keep it in the dark for nearly 6 weeks
The whole
when,
point of having it is to look at, and
yeah, you might have some little amphipods running around, some isopods starting to appear that you think, wow, where did they come from?
yeah,
So again, you're intrigued, you're engaged into the system. It gives you that few hours of just having a look around. If you have had a piece of rock from a friend who you've helped seed the tank with, if you've gone with, like you say, a synthetic scape, or you've even picked up a clump of sand from their aquarium and you've brought that over from a friend, and that's got some life in it, and
yeah,
eventually all of a sudden it's manifested itself in your own. So for me, yeah, it's key because one, you want to engage in your tank, and two, while that's occurring, you want to sort of learn the fundamentals of what's next.
yeah, 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 yeah. I agree with that, bro. I would say like with lighting. In fact, let me ask you a question about lighting. Yeah, would you would you just if you're starting off, say you're a newbie, and people I spoke, they're always working on like a budget. It's very rare to see. I'm phrase this correctly. Sometimes I meet people and they're working on a budget to start a reef tank. Would you say to them with your lighting, concentrate on cycling the tank, and then when you have enough dosh, get yourself like a Radion or get yourself like like a decent light that could hit the spectrums,
Mm.
or ask them what they want to do. Because if it's a fish only system, you can probably just have a standard light on there, can't you?
I mean, yeah, you say that, but to be honest with you, I think nowadays more people are tending to do more, let's say, revision and reviewing the potential products that will cost them from the initial outlay
Mm.
to come into this game
So
because
go for full steam ahead, buy everything you need to buy, and then let's crack on.
realistically, yeah, and take your time obviously doing that. If I mean, don't buy twice in that respect because it's so easily done. Um, just wait that little bit longer. You
Mm.
know, if you've got like a small nano and AI Prime, for instance, is the goal. You know, don't just suffice for something that's on Amazon that's 29.99. Just wait that extra payday, wait that extra two paydays. Commit to buying the product that you want to have to run the system
Yeah,
for the foreseeable future, because you will end up buying twice if you do it that way, and you're wasting your money in that
bro.
context.
Before I came to you, yeah, I was running. I had like I didn't the M6 M60 from M M40 M60 and M90. I had the middle one M60.
The Fluval
Yeah,
range,
yeah.
yeah,
So I had that, yeah, and then they had their own wave makers in there.
yeah.
So I bought two Jabawas. Nothing wrong with Jabawas, and are really good pumps. What I found was like I had two of them on there, and I just didn't like
Mm,
the wires in there. But you always mentioned to me, get the MP10s, get the MP10s from
mm,
Ecotech. I was like, no, no, no. So I ended up buying like four Jabawas, yeah, to keep flowing there because they kept breaking because I just mishandling them.
mm.
And in the end, I came to you and I got two MP10s, and you said to me, now if you had just waited 3 months, saved up, and got all these MP10s, you don't have this headache. And that was in 2017, and it's still on there, still on there working. So I agree with you on that. So save up, get the right equipment so you don't have to buy twice, even lighting as well. Now, here's a question for you, yeah? What size tank would you recommend for someone to start off in this hobby? Would you recommend a nano, or would you recommend something that's in the 100 liter range to start off with?
Again, it's a difficult one. I think it depends on what your initial budget set is from the very very outlay of approaching this hobby.
And the area as well you have to
Yeah,
play with.
and obviously, like you say, yeah, the level of room that you have in your home to obviously put this aquarium into place. Um, Generally, I would probably say 2 foot cube. That's probably the lowest. Me personally, I know there's this huge nano scene, even Pico as well as low as that. Don't get me wrong, there's some lovely little aquariums, but it's just not for me. Generally, I'm not saying it's not for everybody, but I just think if you're looking for long term reefing with that longevity, with the stability, the larger the volume, the more stable it is generally. There are other people that would probably argue slightly to that and say, well, I've kept to such and such successful for so many years under these conditions. Fantastic. Again, goes back to their methods. If whatever they do is working, stick to it, don't
Yeah,
change it. But generally, kind of, yeah, little 2 foot cube in and around sort of like you say, the 100 litre sort of plus kind of area.
150-ish,
It
170.
just makes it more, again, stable for you to be more successful in the factors that can influence your aquarium,
Mm.
external factors, that kind of thing, environmental factors, other aspects of it that will just help you along the way. Again, there was a period of time where everyone was hitting the Fluval Evo.
Yeah, boy.
Again,
Yeah,
successful
man.
time. People were running some lovely little aquariums on there, and
I want
again,
one of them.
it was solely designed for the marine concept.
Yeah,
That was it. It wasn't as if somebody adapted it to that. It was designed around that, so it worked. Again, people were quite successful with it. But if I'm honest, for me, reefing's about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, in the game where
mm.
you've committed.
Yeah,
That's a reefer. That's someone that has been through the trials and tribulations. That's someone that has a real understanding of what it is they've had to keep along the way, along the journey, what they've lost along the way as
boy.
well.
And them finances, it ain't cheap. I tell you that
No,
now. It
it's
ain't cheap,
not.
my G.
It's definitely not. I mean, I'd like to think I probably may have bought 2, 3 new cars in the years that I've been reefing, and it's probably even more than that, to be fair, because a lot of the time you don't really even tell yourself how much you spend on the
Yeah,
hobby,
yeah.
let alone your partner. So it's one of
You
those
should
things.
though. You should tell them.
It shouldn't be something that you
Yeah, you
hide.
should
No,
tell
it should be, like you say, a very open concept. As I say, there's not worth hiding it, but people do.
them. Yeah,
Lots of them. Working in the trade, obviously. I don't want the receipt. Keep that. She
yeah.
can't know at home. He can't know at home. and it just, yeah, it's constant.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the same with anything. It becomes a point of an addiction,
Mm.
and you just got to have it, regardless of the cost.
Yeah, and when starting off as well, like there's a lot of, like you said, the addiction. You kind of like catch that bug, and you. I remember like seeing other people's tanks, but like, yeah, I want to do that, I want to do that. But that's the thing, that's the kind of like trap, but that kind of mentality often led me into trouble. So I say anyone that's starting off, like, yeah, you see the tank, but you need to know, like I said, the trials, tribulations, things that they encountered
Mm.
to get to that point. Because yeah, you would see someone's tank with like massive SPS and massive LPS on the floor, maybe like a tank full of Zoas. Then you go and spend like £500 on coral, put it in your tank to have that look, and within like a week you lost everything because your tank isn't mature enough to do that. So that patience, that bottle of patience, like you said, yeah, you need to really have that in the hobby.
Mm.
So we talk about so lighting on, yeah, temperature, it can be 24, 26 roughly.
Yep.
You say live rock, I say dry rock. You say live sand or dry sand?
I've tried live sands. Again, I'm not too fussed on that side of things, to be fair.
Do you feel like you get cyano and stuff on there once it's dry?
No, because that's an occurrence that happens because of a certain lack of biological process,
Mm,
really, to be fair. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But no, either.
yeah.
I'm on the fence on that one. I'm not ready to. I've I've used live sands, but what I find with live sand that annoys me is it's too fine and it gets blown around the tank too much.
You reckon, but did you get like different course, like is it coarseness or
Yeah, they do, but
course? Yeah, so.
a lot of them you'll find is very, very fine.
Mm. When you set this up for me, you were clever. That's what makes me laugh with you. Yeah, you had the TMC thicker aragonite and you had a fine sand, and what
Mm,
you did was you combined the two of them.
mm,
So you put like you done one at the bottom. The finer one was at the bottom, and then the coarser, more coarse sand you put at the top,
mm.
and then you put the rock structure on it. I was like, why is he doing that? So when I put the wave makers on, like this wave makers, I've got four in there, and I notice once you put them to like say 60%, no sand gets blown over. So maybe that's something people can really look into if they want that white sand kind of not white sand kind of but the sand in the aquarium. See how
Yeah, mix
coarse it
course
is.
it up. Yeah,
Yeah.
get some weight in there because I say it helps keep the finer particulars, obviously, sat within the substrate where it needs to be rather than being blown around the aquarium.
Oh
Because
God, yeah.
at times you got to remember initially you'll start the aquarium off with say two wave makers on 20% on
Mm,
some sort of. We use this concept from Ecotech Reef Quest, for instance.
yeah.
Well, within sort of 6 months, corals have filled the space.
Oh God, yeah. You have like
So now you've got to learn to increase the wave makers, but at the same time, you've now got obstacles in the way that could be now channeling the water in different areas compared to what it was in the initial phase of setup.
hmm
So you're now going to get water going in places where it wasn't there in the first place. So it could be stirring up a little corner of sand now, which it didn't do in the very initial phase
yeah.
because there's nothing to deflect the water away from where it is you were aiming from. So these are all things that eventually, if you could, you could
My
obviously
coffee's cold there.
put into the initial setup and the understanding, but you'll learn that along the way.
All right, let's talk about wave makers. Yeah, when we first starting off, gyres or standard wave makers, you think?
I
And no, no,
personally,
and if you get in a wave maker, would you want it with controllability or just like go for it kind of wave maker?
I think it depends on what it is that you want to keep species wise. To
Mm.
be honest with you, again, the size of the aquarium and how you aquascape the aquarium is key.
But
I
if
find.
so do you think like gyre really covers everything if you had a gyre? Because I know gyre does the top of the water
Do you
that.
mean the method of movement in gyres?
Yeah,
Or do
yeah,
you mean the
yeah.
product?
No, the method, as in like, would you get like a gyre to have that sort of
So it blows
water
water
movement?
up
Yeah,
and down.
yeah. Or do
So
you? That's it. Or would you
yeah.
say to people like when they're starting off, just get like a wave maker, you can like have a conical kind of flow for your system? Like, what would you recommend? Or you can do a mixture of both? I got you thinking now, innit?
It's hard to say to recommend because without knowing the actual outlay, without knowing what it is that you want to keep, they're the fundamentals that determine what sort of movement that you need.
But wouldn't gyre take care of everything though? Because you can still point the gyres at the aquascape, innit?
So you mean like a max spec gyre?
Yeah, yeah, just like
But
point it
if you
down.
look at this way, there's this what I said earlier on. What concept of gyre? Because the MP10, the MP40, the MP60 have gyre method.
But it's conical though, isn't it?
the way that it moves it. So then
Yeah.
that's why I asked, do you mean the Max Spec Jaya in the way that obviously that Max Spec Jaya is called that because of the way that it moves water?
So you getting all technical on me then. You see my brain smoking now, yeah, trying
It
to
is
figure it out.
because obviously there's Jaya setting in the
Yeah.
MP10 for instance, and then
Yeah.
there's a Max Spec Jaya. So what you're saying is that blade or
Yeah, let's talk yeah, Max Jaya kind of pumps out or
or
conical.
yeah,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So realistically, for me, the Jaya is very good because it gives you a blanketed form of water movement. So
Mm.
it's very sort of elongated in the way that it pushes water across the surface, or you can have it horizontally and it pushes it.
Around kind of thing, innit?
Yeah, in a round motion, because obviously what you'll find is again clever marketing. When you look at these products maybe on YouTube or some other videos kind of concept, they won't so much show you it in a reef environment. What they'll do is they'll give you a glass empty box with some
Little
polymer
holes.
beads in it,
Yeah.
and they'll put some fluorescence there, and they'll give you this concept of how the water's moving and how these beads are. That's fantastic, but that's in a box
Yeah.
with just water in.
The real world scenario is
Exactly,
different because
very
everyone's
very
reef is
different.
different.
So, in that respect, for me, what you're better off having is whatever the budget is, have a multitude of movement
Mm.
from different source points at maybe a lower percentage. So what you'll find is instead of having, say, one or two blasting towards each other and creating a central swirl, I would kind of maybe have one on each side and maybe one on the back on a sort of a lower, more sort of peaceful movement of water
Mm.
that's varying consistently
See,
at different points.
with that, yeah, I'm more concerned about the coral, seeing the coral polyps getting that flow. So, yeah, I've got all right. So, for example, if you have four pumps, yeah, you got say two opposite each other and they
Mm.
sorry and they offset, yeah, and you have two on the back, you're getting that random flow.
Hmm.
But then at a certain point on the aquascape, corals aren't getting that sort of movement. At the top, corals aren't getting that flow. With the gyres and that, yeah, if someone was to start off and they realize, okay, I'm just added this coral when I just started and it's not getting flow, but that this position is perfect for it. Would you not say like you just angle the gyre but still have that surface agitation? I just
Yeah,
think it's just like things to consider, basically. I think personally.
you can, but then again, I think it just touches on the way that you lay your aquarium out, for instance, because eventually, um, that pocket of area is going to have something growing into it.
Mm.
So that concept that you've initially come up with will eventually be put on the back burner because now what you'll be doing is you'll be aiming water directly onto a coral surface, coral structure.
Mm.
Well, they don't like that. They don't tolerate that.
So it's been like passive flow is better for them.
Realistically, yeah. And at times, if you want to have increased periods where certain types of wavemate will be doing more at certain points,
Mm-mm.
then pardon me, you're going to get that variation of water movement. Water movement is key, but don't be too overwhelmed with it
Yeah.
because you've got to remember that the areas of space that you have, coral are going to grow into that void.
So is it safe to say like when someone's starting off, yeah, the best thing advice we can offer to them is you're starting off, yeah, get a standard pump that's controllable, wave
Mm,
maker that's controllable, and depending on how your corals grow,
mm.
if you do add corals and the type of corals you add, then change your pumps to suit.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, because there's times you may start with certain species and then you eventually veer away from it and you go with something else.
Like you entail your LPS now, aren't you?
I've always liked a bit of everything. To be fair, I do love my aquapora. Don't get me wrong. But I do like my LPS. I've got like a sort of like a sort of soft touch for some LPS.
Tell me
I
about it.
love Scollies. I love Trackies.
See, I'm a track. I love. I think that's my favorite LPS trackies, bro.
I love Acanthophilia. I love acans to a degree, depending on obviously what colour variants there are.
What about Zoas?
I had every Zoa under the sun at
See,
one point.
my wife has this. Is it that thing where you have so many little circles? That's the same thing. That little phobia you have.
I don't know. It's new for me.
Yeah, she's got like this thing. When she sees zoas and that, she says the eyes make her itch. But my daughter's starting to do the same.
Mm.
So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get like a gang of zoas. I'm gonna put in the aquarium just so they can all look at
Oh, I
them.
think
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Zoas are fantastic corals.
Yeah, they're amazing, man.
I mean,
Color range is
yeah,
amazing.
I had so many at one point. I was even just collecting them. There was, I mean, there was here in the UK. So I was like in America, and
Mm,
maybe it was a huge scene. Some were going for ridiculous prices, and I was
yeah,
one that was willing to pay all those just to add them to my collection. And my son was doing it at the time as well. So Zoas for me, yeah, I've always got again a little special place in my heart for Zoas because I do like them. I've got so many pictures of some of my Zoa collections that I had. Again, I like mushrooms as well. Some of the shrooms
mm,
out there, some of the Discosomas, the Redactus, they're such lovely, different variations
yeah.
and very different in how they multiply and how they grow. So again, I keep a variation thing. I like the euphyllias as well, to be honest.
So, right, the equipment's there. We spoke about the flow
Yep.
according to the animals you want to keep. Yeah. So, what would you say is a good coral for people starting off when you first? Yeah, in fact, at what stage do you think your tank has to be to sustain corals? Because I know you need to get your NO3 and your PO4 balance as best as possible to have corals. But do you think people can add corals once they see nitrates in there?
Um, it helps. I don't think most do, to be fair. I don't even think most people even look at water quality, to be honest with you.
Just chuck it in there. It's been
I,
3 weeks.
I
Chuck it
think,
in there.
yeah, to be fair, if I'm honest with you, don't get me wrong, there are people that are that very sort of not lethargic, very regimental in their way that they approach their life in
Mm,
general or whatever they do in their hobbies. They're very structured, like to do their research and implement it. And then again, there's people that are very gun ho. I want it now. I need it now.
yep.
Tank looks empty. Hurry up, hurry up. I want to go and get some Xenia, for instance, some GSP. I want to go and get some leather corals. I want to go and get some mushrooms. Even zoas, for instance. A lot of people try the zoas, to be fair, because some of these are generally relatively cheap, and
Mm,
a lot of it has been fragged so many times over the years that it's become so hardened
yeah.
that one, the financial loss isn't that great if things do go wrong, and it's not that expensive. So they're kind of the areas that most people tend to start with is what we call the soft corals,
Mm,
really. That's the kind of species that would be more appealing. And then what you'll find is during that early phase, they become more and more interactive with the other variants of corals that are available, and that again opens another door. And then before you know it, you've bought your first Euphelia, for instance.
oh
You've
God,
bought
yeah.
your first, I don't know, Acan frag, for instance.
That was
Or
for
you've even bought a chalice, something along, or even a piece of Montipora, for instance.
yeah. Try
Whether
it
it
out,
be
see how it
plating
goes.
or encrusting. Yeah, you make that transition very quickly because, in my experience, and been in the trade for sort of 5 years or so, maybe a bit longer, because in my early days I worked for another company when I was 19 for a few years. People don't have the patience.
No, bro, and
They just
that's
want
the
it.
thing, and that's the thing. Like, and yeah, the companies make money, but then again, the people like they could save themselves money if they were just like that page. That's what I was saying to you. At what point would you recommend people add corals? And I personally feel like when you see nitrates and you can do a water change, I'm just saying, yeah,
Mm.
and you can, and your fish is still there. And I believe you still need to see if you can whole fish, clean up crew in there, and then add your first coral. I don't think the other way around. Add your first coral when you have nitrate and phosphate.
Yeah, I think it obviously helps with the level of nutrient availability there because obviously there's not that abundance of zooplankton, phytoplankton, or anything like that, which the corals would naturally use as a food source, as well as photosynthesis
Yeah,
as well. So
yeah.
having that level of NO3 and a bit of PO4 available, the softies do like it. So again, it would make it more attractable for the reefer to start with an element of those nutrients available, yes, because then the level of sustainability would be far greater
Mm,
rather than putting, say, a coral into a completely nutrient deprived environment where you're just asking it literally just to photosynthesize, that's it. And again, on the early stages, people don't even know what photosynthesis is, let alone understand it to a
yeah.
degree and how it works. So, yeah, it does help. So that would probably be a key point of when you start seeing a level of nitrate and maybe traces of phosphate.
Mhm.
Again, if you are a little bit more anoraki. You may even do like an early ICP, and if there's a level of phosphorus in there as well, because phosphorus is key to a reef
Oh God,
aquarium,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
within a range, obviously. But yeah, that's probably the sort of areas that you would then start adding, yeah, livestock towards the system.
Yeah. Yeah. So all right, just a quick recap,
But
yeah.
not cleanup crew.
No cleanup crew.
No,
Why not cleanup crew?
too inert.
Oh, there's nothing for them to eat, is
There's
there?
nothing in there. So why put a cleanup crew into an aquarium that's nothing to clean up?
That's, you're just gonna down and contribute to
Yeah,
nutrients,
you know,
innit?
there's nothing there for the crabs to graze. There's nothing there for the snails to graze. There's nothing that's actually active within the system yet.
Yeah. And it's good. I think I mentioned that earlier. When I started, well, when we started this aquarium,
Mm,
yeah, fish was in there and everything else. Coral was in there. The rock was not inert, but yeah, no life on it. And then I waited, and when I saw algae started to pop up, then I got like 10 snails put in there.
yeah,
Then I got my Tomini tank to kind of like, help clean it up as well. Even things like hermit crabs. Hermit crabs are soldiers when it comes to hair algae. I find anyway in keeping rocks. And this urchin, the tuxedo urchin,
yeah.
James, wicked,
Tuxedos.
wicked chucks
Yeah,
cleanup crew. So just recapping here, bro. So we said like, depend on your budget, get a tank that suits your budget. Lighting, go for the best lighting you can. Um, if you don't have the money for it, just like save up because you don't want to buy twice, and
yeah.
that's for all the equipment.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be new either. It can be secondhand.
Yeah,
You
but
know, there is a massive secondhand market out there for some of these products, and you know, some people really do look after their dry goods range. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be brand new. Always, like you say, it can be
yeah,
secondhand. But yeah, but buy what it is that you want to run the system permanently.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And you can always get these the equipment from reefing clubs as well. On
Yeah,
just be careful because I've been scammed, and let's not even talk about that, man. Trust me. Got scammed £100 for what's it, a salinity probe, conductivity probe, never arrived. Um, and that again, just test your water,
yep,
see if your nitrates and the tank can support life. Then go for a softie like a tester coral,
yeah,
yeah, and then see what you like from there. But I always find like when you add your first coral in there, and you go for a tester coral, say for example you go for a zoa, I always recommend to people put it on a rock by itself because yeah, you can monitor the growth and that. But what if you say, you know what, I can keep that. I want to try an LPS coral now. I said, nah, that zoa doesn't fit into what I'm doing now. I'm gonna get rid of that. But if you on your aquascape and it starts populating the aquascape, it makes it a bit difficult for you. So you have to kind of like think, and that's why I felt behind in my first tank because I was buying coral and I was saying, oh, it looks very nice next to this one, but I was never checking the distance.
mm.
So then when that one started to grow, it started to shadow, and now it will grow into the other one. So it's very important when you're buying corals and that to think about the placement and know what patterns they usually grow in.
Yeah, because it's the same with gardening. I mean, when you
Mm.
plant a garden out, you don't plant it for its end product.
Yeah,
You plant and you space out in order to allow for growth to fill the void between the space.
yeah,
Coral is exactly the same. Coral will compete, and one will become dominant over the other. You know, a bit of a warfare occurring, a bit of
mm,
chemical warfare. So yeah, there is that real need at times to be very conservative and say, right, I bought this coral, I'm going to allow that area for that to grow into. I bought that to allow that to grow
yeah.
into that area. But being reefers, no,
Nah,
we want to ram it packed full. We want to make it look fantastic,
plastic.
and then we
Yep.
end up working backwards
Mm-hmm.
and start chopping and hacking and removing because
Taking rocks off. Yeah, the
he
rocks out.
started touching this, or at night its sweeper tentacles are out, or it's feeding, so it almost has this more stinging element what you don't see during the day. So before you know it, you're scratching, why is that coral, why is it receding? And then all of a sudden, if you have a look with a torch one night, you'll see like, whoa, what
Whoa.
on earth is that?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Acons are aggressive. I didn't know acons are so aggressive, bro.
Dry Lords, yeah, they
Yeah,
can
man.
be. Yeah,
Jeez.
gets a lot of the, you know, Galaxias, for instance, they are phenomenally
Mm.
aggressive. Chalice can be. They have some attack mechanisms. Mycediums, again, they're very aggressive.
Yeah, so no recommended for someone starting off.
Even not, no, well, it is, but it's just being aware of what it is that you're keeping. It's
Yeah.
having the understanding.
You know, you live and you learn, yeah. You know, it's pee me off when you used to come and check my tank, yeah.
Hmm.
You say to me, oh, that's gonna grow into that. I'm like, I just try to put that in the perfect place. I'm like, oh God, so I have to go. I have to like kind of like put it in a frame. Okay, that's growing that way. I had to basically get a little bit of tweezers,
Hmm.
rip it off, yeah, clean the air as best as I could, and then reattach it with more glue. But it's worked. It's worked well. So something to remember, people, when you get your first coral, when your aquarium is nice and cycles and that. Just think forward. How big is it going to grow? Is the placement correct? Is it getting the right flow? Is that coral going to attack other corals? And just know anything you buy, do research on it. Basically,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
think, bro.
yeah,
All right,
definitely.
man. Yeah. So I think next one we think we should touch on is when you add corals. Maybe starting to see how you can nurture those corals to grow. And we can talk about dosing, trace elements, and this and that. What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of the next area, I suppose, that people move on from. But I suppose slightly before that is getting your lighting right as well. We touched on flow a little bit earlier on, but problem with today's lighting methods is it's so plug and play,
Mm-hmm.
and I emphasize on the play because I've been a victim of it too. The temptation to play around with, get his lighting schedule, use that lighting schedule, and are you using,
Yeah,
Pirates of the Caribbean? Are you using Mr. Dave Saxby's? Are you,
yeah,
there's all this concept of lighting intensities and spectrums and all, that area just literally sometimes brainwashes people to the point where they become so fixated on it. But also, there's a lot of people that don't understand it and struggle and come in with this really high, everything's just on for whack,
mm-hmm.
and they're literally pounding their aquarium with so much light it becomes completely overwhelmed and they grow algae more than they do coral, and again it's
You don't want
it's
that,
that
man.
concept. So
Trust me.
yeah, probably I would say that the elements of dosing overall in regards to keeping a general healthy
Yeah.
aquarium, but also I think lighting will probably be
Ah,
one of the most important, I think, after sort of say
I,
maturing the system off.
yeah. I think like what we should do like an episode on lighting. I think next episode maybe talk about a bit of dosing and introducing corals and what corals to dose for. So I think like yeah. So yeah, Darren, another amazing meetup, man. I
Nice.
like having these conversations with you about reefing because a lot of it we tend to go back and forth, bro. So thank you so much. And next one we're gonna talk about dosing, well, adding corals, dosing, when to start dosing, and dosing products, how they work. Yeah, and don't believe the hype with some of them dosing products. Would you agree? Would you agree with them with that? With that?
Yeah, again, just find a product that you're happy with that fits into your method of reefing
Hmm.
and enables you to create a consistent, stable reef aquarium.
Yeah,
Period.
cool. So you heard it from us, guys. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.